Hello! In this session, we're going to take a look at topics in Objective 105.1, focusing on exploring environment files. We'll talk about what an environment file is, explore global and local environment files, look at what happens when multiple local environment files are encountered, and view a local file to discuss what you might add or change to modify your shell environment. Let's get started. I'm logged onto a CentOS distribution on a virtual terminal to explore with you environment files. But what is an environment file? Well, an environment file is a shell script. There are many environment files. Some are global, which means they run for everyone, and some are local or personal. That means they just run for you. Some of these environment files reside in a directory specifically for these types of environment scripts. In these shell scripts, various items are set up for your shell environment when you log into the shell, such as when you log into a virtual terminal, as I have done. Items set in these scripts may include setting your shell prompt's appearance and/or certain shell commands that are modified to include options by default. A good way to practice some of your shell scripting abilities is to try to read through some of these files. However, for now, we're going to focus primarily on the file names and locations. These files are global environment files, which are run for who when they log into the shell? If you said everyone, you're correct. Good job. The /etc/profile environment file and the /etc/profile.d directory are typically on every Linux distribution. However, you'll find that the /etc/bash.bashrc is on Ubuntu, but not on CentOS. And you'll find /etc/bashrc on CentOS, but not on Ubuntu. These are the files where the general global environment is configured. Now let's look at the personal or local environment files. These files are local environment files, which are run for individual users after the global files are run. Now, that's a bit of a lie because this last file, bash_logout, is a shell script that is run for an individual user when they log out of the shell. Don't be surprised if you don't find this particular file on your system. Notice the tilde symbol here. This means that your files are in your local home directory. Also notice the period or dot here. Do you remember from the first LPIC 1 exam what that means? If you said that this means the file is a hidden file, you're right. Excellent work. So in order to see these files in your home directory, you'll need to add the -a option on the list command. For the local environment files, there is an order that is followed should multiple files be encountered by the shell. Sometimes on your system you'll find multiple local environment files. In this case, you need to be aware that only one file is selected to be executed, and there is a priority order for this selection. If the shell finds the .bash_profile file, it is run and the rest are ignored. However, if it doesn't find that file, the shell proceeds down the list. We're going to cover this in a later session, but I want to mention it here. If you have multiple local environment files, you can select just one to be given to new users by modifying the files in the skeleton directory. The skeleton directory is /etc/skel. We'll cover the skeleton directory in more detail later. One nice feature that I'd like to point out is that typically all the local environment files will run the .bashrc file. So this is a good file in which to put your desired personal environment settings. While I mentioned it briefly before, now that you have a good idea on the different environment files that are shell scripts, here are a few examples of the things you can do with these scripts. You can set environment variables such as the default editor or your prompt via the PS1 variable. Recall that environment variables were covered in LPIC 1 Exam 1 class. You can also modify commands using the alias command, which we'll cover in detail in a later session. This allows you to force a command to always use a particular option. You can also create your own commands through this feature, which is fun. In addition, you can change your environment's terminal appearance among other things. So these files are worth your time to explore. Let's go look at that .bashrc file where you can set some personal environment items. First, let me clear my screen. My .bashrc file most likely will be different than yours, but I think it will help you to see mine. First, notice the if statement here. This file is looking to run the global bashrc file if it finds it. Notice the last 3 lines in this file. These are my personal changes to my environment. First, I don't care for all the extras that are put into my prompt by the global environment files, so I modify the PS1 environment variable here to just include a $sign. My next modification is for my virtual terminal. I prefer a gray background, which I'm able to achieve by using the setTerm command here. Finally, I'm not a fan of the colorization added to the list command by the global environment files, so I used the unalias command to throw out those modifications. That's something we'll cover in a later session. This way, I can simply use the plain old ls command with no default options. What might you like to change in your shell environment? For review, in this session we looked at topics in Objective 105.1, specifically focusing on environment files. We talked about the definition of an environment file, explored the different global and local environment files, looked at which local environment file is run when there are multiple files, and we viewed a local .bashrc file to discuss items that you might want to change or add to modify your own shell environment. That's it for this session. Thanks for watching.